Okay, incredible. So B'siyata D'Shmaya, with Hashem's help, we jump back into our journey through Likutei Moharan from Rabbi Nachman, Zchus Yagen Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, Amen. We hope everybody had a most wonderful Shavuos, and I know that some of you had a wonderful Shavuos because I was zocheh to spend it with you, but whoever I was not zocheh to spend it with on the Zoom or in person, I hope your Shavuos was also beautiful. Baruch Hashem, was very special Shavuos here. And we jump into a brand new lesson, Torah Chof. And Torah Chof is singular among all of Rabbi Nachman's teachings because Torah Chof is a central lesson. And it's a central lesson, meaning to say all of Rabbi Nachman's other teachings have a relationship and a connection to Torah Chof. Because as we're going to see at the end of Torah Chof, we're not going to do this in the beginning, but I figured let's see the Torah first and then afterwards, because that's where Rabbi Nassan makes reference to it at the very, very, very end. If you turn really to the end of Torah Chof, all the way at the end, Rabbi Nassan writes, the last three lines, if you have, he says, Va'amar sha'Torah tisha tikunim. This Torah, which is Torah Chof, which is on the 9 rectifications, which we'll learn about, he perish al ha-mara hanoira hazois shesiper, is a commentary on an incredible story that Rabbi Nachman told. Really, if you go up just 2 lines, Gam koidim sha'amar Torah hazois siper ezazman mikoidim ma'asen eira. Rabbi Nachman had told an awesome, incredible story, Shara b'makom Shara, that he saw in whatever place he saw it, b'hakitza b'chalayim, whether he saw it awake or in a dream, and he said that Torah Chof is a commentary on that story. And then the Rebbe said that all of his teachings are commentaries on that story. So that story, which is the story of the man in the circle, which I'm not going to get into now, we're going to see it, Be'ezras Hashem, we'll read it inside at the end. He said that all of his teachings are commentaries on this story, and Torah Chof is a very obvious commentary because it literally mirrors the story step by step, and it gives us the Torah form that the story of the man in the circle that Rabbi Nachman saw is. And that's Torah Chof, and that's that story, which after we learn Torah Chof, we'll go back to Chaim Moharan and we'll learn it. But I just want to give you a little bit of background information on the Torah because it's very, very important to understand what this lesson was and what happened with this lesson. And you don't have this in front of you. I'm just reading to you from a commentary on Likutei Moharan that brings the Likutei Moharan, which is a little bit of the biographical information and background. And I'm just going to read to you a little bit of what he says over here. Torah zu namra b'Breslev. This Torah was said in the city of Breslev b'Rosh Hashanah. This was a Rosh Hashanah teaching, and so automatically we already know that it's at a different level, right? Because Rabbi Nachman's whole thing was Rosh Hashanah, and if this is what he was giving over, so obviously it comes from a very essential place within the Torah of Breslev. In the year Tavkov Samachei, Utchilas amirasa hi bebein hashmasha shebein yom chamishi l'shishi. It was a late Thursday night, first day of Yantiv, going into the second day of Yantiv, which is when Rabbi Nachman would give over his lessons on Rosh Hashanah. It was between the first night, the first day, right, going into the second night. Ukumuva b'Chaim Moharan, and this is what it's brought in Chaim Moharan. Rabbi Nassan writes, "So v'kayitz koyna bein haPesach hayinu etzloi." In the summer, prior to Pesach, or Bein Pesach Latzeres, really between Pesach and Shavuos, which is exactly now, right? Or just was, but in this time period of the year, Hayinu Etzloi, we were by Rabbi Nachman, says Rabbi Nassan, Be'esha Yapay Mechutane Harav Mechemolnik, when his Mechutin, the Rav of the city of Chemelnik was there. Va'al Sipra Lanu Hamara Haneira Hamaschelas Echad Hayashaychev Ala Aretz. Then Rabbi Nachman told the awesome story of the Echad HaSheikh B'La'aretz, of the man in the circle or the man laying on the ground. Va'amar, and that's what I just told you, Shazai Satar Tishatikunim, who perish alamara. And he told us that this teaching, Torah Chof, is a commentary on that story. Va'amar Shebechol HaTorah Sha'omer, and then he said every Torah that he ever taught, Yesh B'em Ramazah Me'amara Hazais, have some kind of a hint to this awesome story. But this Torah Tisha Tikunim is completely a commentary on Torah Chof, and we're going to see that in Likutei Moharan, where after Reb Nosson brings the vision, so at the end he shows you how it's connected to Torah Chof, and we're going to see this over there Be'ezras Hashem. Okay. In Siach Sarfei Kodesh it's brought that Be'ez Shamar Admar HaTorah Tisha Tikunim, that when Rabbi Nachman was giving over Torah Chof, Amar Maranat Zechron L'Bracha, Reb Nosson said, Shehirgash Koilus Uvrakim B'Moichai, that he heard thunder and lightning, much like it says by Kabbalah Satira. So it's very apropos to be learning this right after Shavuos. He felt that in his mind, Koilus Uvrakim. He heard, the thunder and lightning of Har Sinai in his mind. And then he brings over here that Kishehischel HaTorah, and this is very evocative, and this is what Likutei Moharan is. It's just a description of all the other information that surrounds different aspects of Rabbi Nachman's life and teaching. That Kishehischel HaTorah Tisha Tikunim, when Rabbi Nachman began to reveal the Torah of Tisha Tikunim, Rosh Hashanah Bein Hashmashas Kedarko Tamid, which was Rosh Hashanah, like we said, Bein Hashmashas between day 1 and day 2. Before nighttime of the second night, right, of the second day of Yantiv. The day was already darkened. Reb Nosson says, I sat very close to him, and I was looking at him because they were ready for Rabbi Nachman to reveal a lesson, because that's how it was. Very easy, and I saw Sha'amar HaTevas Tisha Tikunin Yakirin Ismasrin Ledikna. I saw him repeating the words from Sefer Ditzniusa Parag Gimel, which is what this whole teaching is going to be a commentary on. And he was saying these words, 9 Tikunim were given over to the beard. Tisha Tikunin Yakirin, 9 precious rectifications, Ismasrin Ledikna, were given over to the beard. And he was saying them B'koiches Gedolos Ma'oid Ad Mitzvah HaNefesh. He was saying them over with incredible koyach, incredible effort, out of mitzvah and nefesh, till it looked like he was going to die. And this was Rabbi Nachman's state before he began to reveal the Torah. Tisha Tikkun and Ismas on the deck, like incredible energy. Ube'ema with trembling, v'yira and awe, v'resas v'ziyah, his whole body was shaking. Asher Ev Shalashar, Rabbi Nosson says it's impossible to describe. It's like a volcano about to erupt. I can imagine Rabbi Nachman. He's about to channel down, the teaching that, like, nobody ever heard anything like it. And he, the tafas is kanai kama pa'ama b'koiches gedolos, and he was pulling on his beard. He was pulling on his beard very, very, very hard. The Ef Shalitzar, as I speak, Rabbi Nosson says, I can't describe this to you in writing, what was going on there. And he said, I've already explained elsewhere. Rabbi Nachman said that before he says the first words of a teaching, he thought he would die. That's how it was with every Torah that he taught. And before he started making Kiddush, but when it comes to this teaching, Torah Chof, Rabbi Nosson says, I saw this with my own eyes. In another place, it's brought, the reason Rabbi Nachman felt this way before revealing a Torah, because it was an incredibly difficult and painful thing to take these Torahs that we already learned in the Hakdama to this series, existed way beyond words and letters and psukim and concepts that are just a spiritual revelation, a perception, and to bring them down. Right, and then put it into constricted words and psukim and details that he could then reveal. That was extraordinarily painful and difficult. Because usually, he says, before Rabbi Nachman revealed Koydem HaTorah, he would first sit for an hour or 2 hours. He would just sigh and he would move and he's trying to bring it down. For 2 hours before he said anything, they sat in silence, and the Rebbe is fighting an inner battle to figure out how to bring this down into words. Even though we all sat in silence, you could see from his movements that this was Mesiras Nefesh Mamish. And it wasn't just for them, it was primarily for us. We have to appreciate it. It's not just a person who was a genius and taught Torah. You have to understand that's why learning Chayei Moharan is so important, because otherwise you just read it out of a sefer and you say, okay, this was a special, a big Talmud Chacham, a big Baal HaSaga. It was much deeper than that. He was Meiser Nefesh. And then he would open his mouth, and he would begin to talk. And here again he brings, I saw with my own eyes, says Reb Nassan, which is our Torah, that specifically he saw this before Rabbi Nachman began to reveal Torah Chof, like we just learned, he was saying this over again and again, Tisha Tikunin Yakir Nismas in the Dikna. Ubechol Pam, Tafas Bekoyach Bezakana B'shtei Yadav. Here he adds more details. He was grabbing onto his beard on the two sides of his cheeks and pulling. He almost pulled his beard out. That's what he says. With incredible yira and mesiras nefesh before revealing this teaching about the beard. And I think it's important just to have that context to understand, like, Torah Chof doesn't come in a vacuum. Torah Chof is coming after 2 hours of Mesiras Nefesh, and it's a mystery. It's a total mystery who this man was and what this Torah is. It's absolutely unique. Okay, a little bit more biographical information we're going to say after we begin the Torah, because it relates to the end of Ois Aleph. Okay, but let's begin. So, just a little bit of background, even first, to the concepts that we're going to be learning about, which are the Tishin Tikunin Yakirin. Tishin Tikunin Yakirin are a lower form of the Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna, right? That might be more familiar with us. To us, some of us have learned about the 13 Tikunei Dikna, the 13 rectifications of the beard. And obviously, anytime a Jew hears the word 13, obviously that should bring up the 13, the Midas of Rachamim, right? So the 13 Midas of Rachamim are associated with the beard of Atik Yomin. Okay, so in the Partsufim, Atik Yomin, which is the long face, right, or Arik Ampin, really, Arik Ampin is the long face that's a revelation of the sphere of the Partsuf of Keser, right? And then you have Abba, which is Chachma, that's the first Yud, or the Yud of Yud Kevavke. Then you have Ima, which is the Hey, and then you have the 6 spheros, right, because Abba and Ima are respectively Chachma and Bina. You have the 6 spheros from Chesed down to Yisod, that becomes Zeir Ampin. And these are different personalities. Atik Yomin has, again, in a mashal, Chas v'shalom, it's not anything physical, right? So Arik Anpin has a beard, right, which is a symbol for that which flows from upward to downward, and that's why it's Rachamim, right? And that's why the hair on top of the head is din, and the Hasidim are very careful, to cut the hair, and right, and the hair on top is din because it grows upward, and that's the energy of Gevura that pushes back. Like fire is Gevura because it goes upward, right? It's trying to withhold the Shefa. And Mayim is Chesed because Mayim Yardimi Makam Gevay Makam Namach. Water flows from an upper point to a lower point, and that's exactly why the hairs on the face, which are growing downward, are tzinoiros, are little tiny channels. Right, because they're not just hair; they're seen as channels, very thin channels that are bringing the hashpa'as of the head, which is the moichin, which is always the motivating, animating life force, and bringing them down across the entire maracha of the body. Right, and that's the idea of the beard. And so when it comes to Arik Anpin, there are Yud Gimel Tikunim, right? There are 13 rectifications, which are the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim, which are also the Yud Gimel Midas Shat Torah, Midrash Spam, which is why the Torah is called Rachmana, right? Because it also emerges from that place, 620 mitzvahs, 620 gematria, Keser, right? And that's the place of Arik Anpin, and it comes down through the beard of the Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna. Of those Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna, 9 of them are given over to Zeir Ampin. So Zeir Ampin is also a face, means a small face. right? Arik Anpin means a long face, and that's the idea of the parts of Erech HaPayim, right? Also a long face, that's Arik Anpin, it's Keser, that's the place of Ein Danin Bekeser, there's no din there, it's Magen Merishus Achris, it's, right, it's everything is full of chesed and compassion. Zer Anpin is a small face that shows up in the context of the Maracha, the system of Mida Keneged Mida, or Hanhagas HaMishpat. That's Zer Anpin. And that's the Hanhaga with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs our world in a way of Chesed and Gevura that we can experience, sometimes good things, sometimes bad things. In Arik Anpin, it's all in a Maladoi. That's the La'asad Lavedik perception of Yemahu Yeh Hashem Echad Ushmoi, which is Alikim is also Echad. And that's what we learned in Torah Dalet, that if a person is living in that mindset, he's already Zay Sebachim Ein Olam Haba. That's Arik Anpin. Generally speaking, though, we experience the Maracha of Zeir Anpin, where it's a small face. We don't see the full Giloy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Panim, which we spoke about yesterday, right? And we don't see the full manifestation of Hashem's Panim. And so therefore, there's a Rachamim there, but it's only 9 out of 13. And these are taken from 2 psukim. Okay, the pasuk of the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, all of us are familiar with. It's a pasuk in Shemais, right after the Chetei Egel, where Moshe Rabbeinu was piled by HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he should have compassion and Klai Yisrael not wipe them out legamrei. And that's the pasuk V'yavra Hashem Alpanav V'yikra Hashem Hashem. So count with me. Kel is the first. Rachum, Chanun, Erech, Apayim, Rav Chesed, right? That's 6. Ve'emes, 7. Noitzer Chesed is 8. La'alafim is 9. Noitzer Avain is 10. Va'fesha is 11, V'chata is 12, and V'nakeh is 13, right? Those are the 13 midas of Rachamim of Arik Anpin, right? They relate to the upper beard, so to speak, and we explained why it's the beard. Then, when Moshe Rabbeinu davens for mercy after the Chet of the Meraglim, the pasuk, lesser known pasuk about Midbar, is where Moshe Rabbeinu only makes reference to 9 of these midas of Rachamim. And those are seen in Kabbalah as the beard of Zeir Anpin, right? They are the lower tikkunim, the 9 tikkunim, as opposed to the Yud Gimel tikkunim, which relate to the lower beard, and they are given over, Ismasrun Ledikna, they are given over to Zeir Anpin Kiviyachol from Arik Anpin. And those are, it's a pasuk about Midbar Yudal Yudches, Hashem, Erech, Apayim, Rav Chesed, Noise Avain, Vafesha, V'nakeh, Lo Yenake, Poikid Avain, Avais Albanim, Al Shileshim, Al Ribeim. Right? Those are the 9 tikkunim that are going to be discussed in this teaching. Okay? So with that background, now we can understand a little bit, because obviously the Chet HaMeraglim is going to be something that shows up very, very strongly in this Torah. And I just want to point out, I'll try my best not to get too explicit with it, because I think that I think it's open to interpretation, but obviously I'm the one who's giving it over, so I'll probably filter it through my interpretive lens. But I just want to make one other comment about Torah Chof that Rabbi Nachman said before we begin. That Rabbi Nachman says that all of his Torahs are predictive. Right? He says, Torah shali yechalim leida asidas. You can know the future from them. And he says that when the future actually unfolds, you can look back at the teachings, you see mamish, it's all in there. To me, Torah Chof is one of the most prophetic, if you will, of all the Torahs. And it is all about our return to Eretz Yisrael and the challenges and difficulties, as well as the way that it will unfold, and maybe more tragically, the way that it could unfold. The way that it could, and the way that it didn't. And we're going to have to be sensitive to that as he goes through. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see if the Chaver themselves can pick up on it. I'll point out a little bit, but there are some confounding references in this Torah to the way that we got Eretz Yisrael back. Mysteries upon mysteries upon mysteries. But it has to do, bottom line, with the Chet HaMeraglim and what was going on over there, which is what activated Moshe Rabbeinu's revelation of the 9 midas of Rachamim as they relate to Zeir Anpin. Okay, with this very lengthy introduction, let us begin Torah Chof. Lashon Rabbeinu Zechron Livracha. Okay, you have to understand this is 2 hours after the Rebbe is pulling on his beard and just trying to find the strength to reveal Torah. Here he begins. Pirkat Lisa third parak in Sefer the Tzniusa says, Tisha tikunin yakirin esmasra l'dikna. 9 holy, precious rectifications were given over, right, from Arak Anpin to Zer Anpin of the beard. Kol mad istama v'leizgalia ilav yikarish ishtikach. These are secrets, and whatever is hidden and not revealed, ilav yikarish takach, is even more elevated and more precious. V'hu ginzaya yakira. These are hidden things. These are hidden things. Okay, and now he's going to reveal how these 9 tikkunim, which are the 9 midas of rachamim, or the lower midas of rachamim, show up actually on a person's beard, show up on a person's face. And here they are. Nimin al nimin mekame pischa de udnin ad reisha de puma. Many hairs that begin at the pischa de udnin, by the ears, and flow down to the mouth, to the beginning of the mouth. That's tikkun number 1. Okay, and if you want to keep track, that's the tikkun of erech. Okay, that's the long tikkun of the hairs that start over here and they go down to the mouth. Mereisha hai la reisha hai. Then mereisha hai la reisha hai. Just want to make sure I'm getting all these right. These are the hairs of the lips, right? And I'm just reading in the commentary, right, which go from one side of the face to the other side of the face. And that's the mustache, and that's the tikkun of apayim. All right, so we have erech apayim. Right, that's mireisha hai l'reisha achara. Ishtakach mitchos trei nukvin archa malya deloi ischazia. And then you have underneath the nose, behind the mustache, very, very, very little hairs that go up after the regular mustache and go up in like to the nose. That are archa malya deloi ischazia, that are very, very hidden, very slight, that you cannot see. That's the tikkun of Rav Chesed. The fourth is ilin ischafyon mehagisa la'agisa ilin ischafyon mehagisa mehagisya. This is the tikkun of noise avain, which are the cheeks that get covered on either side, right? So the part of the cheeks that are covered with hair. And then the tikkun of hey is ba'hain ischazia tapuchin sumka kavarda. This is the fifth tikkun of noise avan upesha. And these are the cheeks themselves that do not have any hair, that are like 2 red apples, right? Like red apples, right? That are red like a rose. That's the fifth. The sixth is by ad chedoi, which is vinake, right? And so these are all the hairs that go down onto the chest, right? If a person is privileged to have a long enough beard, right? So it goes down, and that's vinake. And then the seventh is sifan sumke kevar de ispanun. You have the lips themselves that do not have any hair on them, and they are red and without any hair. That's lo yanake. The eighth is the irin nachsim groida machafio kedala. The eighth is the small hairs that are growing on the neck, very, very thin hairs down over here, right? That's the eighth tikkun, and that's the tikkun of poiked and avos albanim, and the ninth tikkun, the ninth mid of rachmim here is ravravin uze'erin nachsin b'shikoila. These are behind the beard, as a person has a beard growing, is long hairs, small hairs that are hidden behind, that you cannot see from looking at a person who has a beard from the front, right? And they're sort of hidden in the back, closer to the body, and that's al shideshim al ribeim. And then the Zohar Kadosh finishes over here, bi'il in ishtakach gibor v'takif. When a person has a beard like this, he says ishtakach gibor v'takif. Then a person's a warrior. Okay, warriors have beards. Can't really think so much, in the past of like a warrior was clean shaven. The Vikings, real warriors had beards. And spiritually also is a very, very important thing, at least a little bit, if a person can grow a whole beard, for whatever marital reasons. But a person can have just maybe a little bit, and that's already, even just to have a little bit already activates a lot of rachamim in a person's life if they can. Okay. And those are the 9 tikkunim.
Will you go over it again when we get?
What's that?
Will we go over it again somewhere in the Torah? Just to get us.
Yes. In the end, we'll at least translate again. But okay, fine. We have now introduced Torah Chof, and we've learned the part of Sefer Ditzniusa upon which Torah Chof is the commentary. And here the Rebbe begins. Mysteries, mysteries, mysteries. Da, says the Rebbe. And he said whichever Torah he teaches that begins with Da, he's drawing it down from Atzilus. Da. It's just the highest place. Sheyesh neshama ba'olam. There is a soul in the world. Sha'al yada, that by way of the soul, nezgala be'uri u'pirushei HaTorah. All of the explanations and the commentaries of the Torah are revealed through the soul. V'hi mesubelas b'yisurim, and it suffers. This is a suffering soul. Pas b'melach toichal, it only eats bread with salt. Umayim b'mesura tishtel, like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Parak Vav, and it only drinks water from a flask. Ki kach darka shel Torah. This is the way of the Torah, right? And of course, the Mishnah in Avos adds another element which Rabbi Nachman doesn't bring here, which is Va'ala Aretz Tisha, and it lays on the floor, right? And I haven't explained to you the vision that Torah Chof, or revealed the vision that Torah Chof is commentary on, but I told you the little bit is that it's about a man lying on the floor, right? So already you see a reference to that vision, which we will learn together after we finish this Torah in a few days, Be'ezras Hashem. V'chol mefarshei Torah, and all commentators on the Torah, hey mikabel mezois haneshama. They are receiving the Torah, that they are able to explain the Torah using these commentaries and explanations. All these commentaries flow down through this neshama. V'zois haneshama, and this soul called vareha kegachale eish. All of her words, it's going to be very important why he says devareha, not devarav. I mean, in general, neshama, right, is female. But over here we're going to see that Rabbi Nachman was referring to a specific female, which is absolutely mind-blowing, as we're going to see. Kol devareha, all of her words are kegachale eish, are fire. The words are fire, like coals of fire. Ki because it is impossible for a person to receive waters of Torah, and Torah we know is water. We just had Shavuos, right? And Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai is itself, we said, is Rachmana. I hinted to this in the beginning, where the Gemara in Tanya says that Torah is comparable to water. Ma mayim yardi v'makom gevaya l'makom namuch, just like water flows from a high place to a low place. So the pasuk tells us that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu came down on Har Sinai yesterday to give us the Torah, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Right? So Hashem also descended. The water of Torah flows down, and that's why it's correlated to the mayim of the beard, so to speak, right? Which is flowing downward. And all these are sinoiris, all these are channels that are bringing the water, so to speak, of the higher levels of spirituality down, down, down across the entire system. So he says, the only way that you can get the waters of Torah is a person whose words are mamish fire. And it's an interesting thing. It's like water, fire, fire, water. You can only get the water through the fire. And that's one of the things that's brought actually about this Torah, is that Rabbi Nachman, when the Rebbe finished revealing the Torah and he was sitting around with the Hasidim later on, he smiled and he said, he said, today I spoke about fire and water. That was how he summed up the whole Torah. Fire and water. That's. You can draw the meimei HaTorah, the waters of Torah, only through Devarav Kegachale Eish. Bebechinas, as the pasuk in Yirmiyahu says, Haloi Kai Dvari Ke'eish. Hashem says, aren't my words like fire, words of fire? Uksha neshama zois neifeles. And when this neshama, for whatever reason, has a descent, when its words are no longer fire, and the words cease to reflect that fiery spirit, and the words become cold. And again, we're always looking in this chabura to the connection between one Torah and the previous one, which over here it should be plainly obvious. Right? The whole previous Torah was about words, right? And they were all about fiery words and how to cool them off. Right? Remember, like we learned in the Bechina of the dream, Mikre Laila, right? Ruach Shtush, Shivim Lashon, Targum, that whole thing. Cham Libi Bekirbi, right? Shemikar, Chami Musa, Shaloshan HaKodesh. But when it's in a negative sense, when the words are separated from their source in fire, and the words no longer emerge with Eish, Azayin Stalakas, then the neshama dies. It leaves. Ukishin Stalakas, and when it leaves the world, Azayin Stalak Bi'uriyatar Nemshachim Al Yada, all of the words of Torah and the commentaries of Torah that were supposed to be drawn down through the soul close up. And then all of the commentators, all of the Talmidei Chachamim that were supposed to be writing down the explanations of the Torah are incapable of really understanding the Torah at all. And then and then people start to fight. There's fighting among the tzaddikim, and people start to argue with them because there's no clarity anymore. And people don't feel that the tzaddikim are delivering a clear, unified, relevant message to the people. Says the Rebbe, there's only one reason that there's machlokes in the world, is because we don't have clarity in Torah. And the Rebbe is going to say this in Torah Samach, that really all machlokes is rooted in the machlokes of Abai and Rava, right? And Rav and Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish and all of the others. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shmuel, etc., etc. All the Baal Plugtas, it's all rooted there. Because that's the source in Kedusha. And over there you can say, Chayim, right, in a certain sense. But when it's Nishtalsha, when it comes down into this world, and it's no longer clear that those machlokes are producing a Torah of relevance, there's no psak that emerges from it, and just this one does that thing, and that one does this thing, and there's no unification, this causes fights. This causes fighting. Because the primary machlokes in the world is because we don't have psak. We don't have clarity in terms of drachim. Because the be'ur, right, or like he says over there, the psak, but the explanation, the clarity, is an answer to all of the questions and all the fightings, because he could explain it. And each one could explain their position. And then we can come to synthesis between fire and water, right? Which is chabura and chesed. And we can have tiferes, which is Torah. But if we don't have that, then we're not able to draw our Torah chesed water through the gevura, and all we're left with is a mess. Is fragmentation. Now, this entire Torah that we're going to be learning now for the next few days, Torah Chof, is a commentary, really, aside from it's a commentary on the story that Rabbi Nachman told, which we're going to learn at the end, is really a commentary. I should have brought a chumash in here with me. Maybe grab a chumash if you don't mind. Is a commentary on the passage in Bamidbar that tells over the story of the hitting of the rock, of Moshe Rabbeinu hitting the rock, thank you so much, as opposed to speaking to the rock. Thank you. This is in Bamidbar Chof, and it's important just to read the psukim first, because he's going to be revealing rapid fire the deeper meanings and the sodas of each and every pasuk here, and it's important just to read this first. Okay, so this is not Shemais in Parasha in Sefer Bamidbar. Chof is Parashas Ukas, and I'm just going to read to you the words first, okay? Yeah? And then just listen as I have it over here. Vayavoyu b'nei Yisrael kol ha'eda midbar Tzin. Klal Yisrael came to Midbar Tzin, to the wilderness of Tzin. And b'chodesh harishon v'yeshav am b'kadesh, and they lived over there, and they settled in Kadesh. V'atama sham Miriam. And Miriam died there, v'atikabar sham, and she was buried there. And there was no water for the people. And they gathered to Moshe and Aaron. And the people fought with Moshe. And they said, like they said many times, If only we had died, with our brothers. What did you bring us here? Why did you bring us here to die a slow and painful death? Would that we would have died in Mitzrayim. Why did you bring us here to die of thirst? Terrible death. Why did you take us and bring us to this terrible place? There's no water to drink. It isn't a place that's fruitful. It isn't a place that has the proliferation of different kinds of produce. Moshe and Aaron run away. Essentially, they retreat into the Oil Mayim, which was safe because nobody can go there, and they fall down on their face, right? And the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, take your staff and gather the people together. HaKadosh Baruch Hu clearly says, speak to the rock, and it will give forth its waters. And you will take water out of this rock, and you will water the people and their animals and their flocks. Moshe Rabbeinu takes the staff, like HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him. And they gather all the people. And then Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, Shimuna HaMoirim, listen to me, you rebels. I'm going to take water now for you out of this rock. Or like a question, because of the way that they were behaving, do you deserve that I should take water out of this rock? This fateful moment. The whole history hinges on this one. How long did it take, for the staff to come down? Just a few seconds. The whole history, because Moshe would have gotten into Eretz Yisrael, the whole thing was done already. Vayara Moshe Yada, he lifts his hand, and he strikes the staff twice with his. He strikes the rock twice with his staff. And many waters flowed out. And this water, the people drank, and their flocks drank. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells to Moshe and Aaron, this that you didn't believe in me, to sanctify me in the eyes of the Jewish nation. You are not going to be able to enter the land that I promised these people. And Hema Mei Meriva, these are called the Mei Meriva, the waters of strife. Asher Ravu B'nei Yisrael Hashem v'Yikadesh Bam. That Klal Yisrael fought with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he was sanctified through them. So this is very famous, right? All of us know this, but what we might not know is the juxtaposition, the closeness between this passage of the Mei Meriva and the very next passage. Right, so I'm not going to embarrass anybody by asking everybody, what you think the next passage is. We should know our Halavai, we should know our Chumash like that. But the very next passage, and it's like Markesher, is the very next thing, is Vayishlach Moshe Malacha Mikadesh al Melech Edom. Moshe Rabbeinu sends emissaries from Kadesh, where they were, to the king of Edom. Koyamar Achacha Yisrael, and this is what we say, Ante Yadatim is called Klal Hashem Mitzasanu. You know how much we've suffered and struggled along our journey to the kings of Edom. This is what he said. We suffered a genocide. I'm starting to give a little bit hints, because mamish prophetic prophecy. We suffered a Holocaust, they said to the kings of Edom. Unbelievable. And Hashem heard us and He saved us and we survived. And we're living in Kadesh. Let us pass through your land to get to Eretz Yisrael. You see what Rabbi Nachman's going to make of this. We won't drink from the waters. We won't eat from your vineyards. We will travel on the Derech HaMelech. We won't deviate from the agreed upon route, whatever it is, until we pass through your land. And Edom says, not happening. I'll come out against you with a sword. Okay, we'll take the mountain route. Any water we drink, don't worry, we'll pay for it. I'll just pass through with my feet. Just let me walk through. And again he says, you cannot. And Edom came out against the nation. They refused to allow Klal Yisrael to pass through Edom, and Vayet Yisrael me'alav, and Klal Yisrael went away from them. Okay, this is what Torah Chof is going to address. The depth of the secret of the Mei Meriva, what happened there, as well as the correlation between what happened with the Mei Meriva, and what happens with the Melech of Edom. So let's look back inside. Now that Rabbi Nachman revealed in like 4 sentences this brand new concept of a neshama that exists, that water of Torah is supposed to come out of this neshama, and it's bitter. It's a bitter soul that deals with a lot of pain. And its words need to be words of fire, and when the fire cools, you can no longer draw Torah from it. Says the Rebbe, this is the deeper meaning. This is the site of the Mei Meriva. So how did we do? Because we just read it inside, right? The whole episode of the Mei Meriva begins with Klal Yisrael arriving at Midbar Tzin. Says the Rebbe, you know what Midbar Tzin is? Shebechinas Dibur Mitzunan. Midbar is Dibur, like Edgar pointed out, right? Midbar is Dibur. Tzin is cold. Is Tzonin. Mitzunan. So what happened in Midbar Tzin? Shesham Mesa Miriam. Miriam died. Says the Rebbe, who is Miriam? Miriam was that soul from which all the explanations of the Torah were coming down through Miriam. And her words needed to be words of Gachale Eish. And when they came to Midbar Tzin, meaning Miriam's words were cooled off, so then Mesa Miriam, the Neshama is Nistalekas, like we learned. You know why her name was Miriam? Because Merirus, Hashibur ala Torah. It's an embittered soul. Va'az Nistalek habe'er. And then the Be'era shel Miriam went away. What's the Be'era shel Miriam? Says the Rebbe, not just a Be'er like a spring, but Bi'urei HaTorah. The Be'er of Miriam stopped. Hainabechinas Be'urei HaTorah. And this is Yedua, that it's brought from Rav Chaim Vital that when the R Yaakov wanted to begin to teach him Kabbalah, the Ari took him into the Yam Kinneret, right? You're familiar with this? And somewhere in the Yam Kinneret, known only to the great Mikubalim, in a certain location is the Be'er Shel Miriam. And from that place water comes out. And the R Yaakov fed Rav Chaim Vital water from the Be'er Shel Miriam, and that opened him up. And from that he was able to learn all of Kabbalah. See, there's a direct correlation between the Be'er Shel Miriam and Be'urei HaTorah. So what happens when the soul that's embittered, which is Miriam, is Nistalek, and we lose the Be'er Shel Miriam, which is her water, as a result of coming to Midbar Tzin, where the Diburim are Mitzunan, are cold. So va'az vayer va'amim Moshe. Right away, the people are fighting with Moshe. Hanabechinas hameriva shenesarik and iskalel, which is the battle that we just learned. You see how one small idea with like 4 concepts, as long as they're brand new, unlocked the whole sugya. Like the Rebbe didn't even say anything yet. He revealed 3 things. Be'er, Be'uri HaTorah, fire, and all of a sudden the whole passage opens up again. I want to impress upon you in a way that no tzaddik in history ever interpreted this passage of the Mei Meriva. It's just totally different than anything else. He unlocked brand new layers of Torah, and it's like, on the one hand, like we keep on saying, it's so unlikely that there would have been a tzaddik who lived very close to our times, not in the Rishonim, not in the Gaonim, not in the Amoraim, and the Tanoim. Mamash and Achrayim, he just lived. We could go to his house, in Breslov, can go to in Uman, Beis Rabbeinu, like we know where he lived, we know, like. And he was a singular tzaddik. That Chidush Kamoinai, like he said, Chidush Kamoinai loy haya me'ayla. There was never a tzaddik like him in history. And it isn't just hearsay, the proof is in all the pudding that we're learning. It's mamish delicious pudding, no? That's Likutei Moharan is delicious. The proof is mamish in this pudding. This is what he says. By Yarav Amim Moshe. So naturally, the people are going to fight with Moshe there. If you understand really what's happening, these are the fights that are instigated as a result of no clarity in Torah. And that's why the commentators on the Torah are called Miriam, because they were receiving from this embittered soul, Miriam, who was called Miriam. And they're also called Miriam for a different reason, because Gam He Miriam Es Mirehem. Even though they're students of this soul, as it were, because she's channeling all the commentaries, and that's what enables them to be able to understand the Torah, they teach their teachers, right? And so that's why every student is also called a Moira, is also called a teacher. Even though they are mekabel from the Be'er Shel Miriam, they're also called Miriam. That's why when Moshe was talking to them that they wanted to drink, what did they want to drink? The waters of Torah. He referred to them as Hamoirim. Okay, Ezra Shem, tomorrow we're going to start Ois Beis, but before we do, I said I was going to read more biographical information, and I want to do that now.
Just 1 second.
Yes.
Miriam is also Mar Yam, bit of waters. Yam, which also maybe was, I don't know, had a clarity of Shar Nun Yam.
Yeah, beautiful, so, right? The Bina. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see that with the Bina Malchus connection. We're going to see in a space. Okay, so your mom is going to see that there, and I'll just read to you a little bit more biographical version. They brought it over here in the beginning, and it's important. Okay, the way that the Torah actually came down was that the end of the Torah was first, and then only then he began to reveal this bit about Miriam and the Maryam and the rock. At the end, Rabbi Nachman speaks about Eretz Yisrael, and that's printed over here in our Torah as the very almost the very last paragraph. And so Rabbi Nassim brings over here Achashar Amar Torah Tisha Tikunin. V'sham medaber harbi memalas Eretz Yisrael, where the whole thing is about Eretz Yisrael and what it means to be able to enter Eretz Yisrael. Shezeh ikar, Rabbi Nachman says, Shezeh ikar nitzachon. The primary victory is to get to Eretz Yisrael. Kishezaychen lavala Eretz Yisrael. Ubafrat be'esha amar hatayra be'er hadavar yoser. He explained more and more. Because hischal baschalas hatayra tekel l'daber Eretz Yisrael. The way that Rabbi Nachman revealed it on that Rosh Hashanah was not that he got to it at the end. That's the first thing he started to say, which is printed in our version, in our edition at the end. Rabbi Nachman said this: Misha roitza lios Yehudi, a person who wants to be a Jew. Dainu leilech midargal adarga. Listen to his definition of being a Jew: is someone who goes from level to level. That's what it means to be a Yehudi. Efshar kiyam al yidei Eretz Yisrael. It is only possible via Eretz Yisrael. Ukeshemenatzchen al milchama. And when a person is victorious in that battle, az nikram ish milchama, then he's called a warrior. Person can't praise themselves in their sword; they're not. Okay, that's the first thing he revealed. Then he started to speak about the neshama. Right? Then he started to speak about this soul through which all the commentaries of the Torah come down. Then his slav ma'oid, and he was filled with his slavos. Veherim koiloi, and he lifted his voice very high. Va'amar yesh neshama, and he said there's neshama. But he began with the Eretz Yisrael bit, which is going to be important later. Then I just want to read to you one thing over here. Listen to this. Okay, listen to this. The Chaim Moharan, it's brought. We've got just more biographical information. B'yosa b'derech, when he was on a journey in Av of Taf Kuf Samach Dalid. So keep in mind, right? So that was right before, because this was taught on Rosh Hashanah Taf Kuf Samach Hey, right? So this was Taf Kuf Samach Dalid. So just a month earlier, 2 months earlier, Niftra Bita Aktana Maras Feiga Zechron Lebracha. His daughter, Feiga was a young girl. They call Maras Feiga. It's interesting. Rabbi Nachman had infant children that, if they're brought and referred to in the later Breslover works, they're Harav Hagoyin. Like they say, Harav Hagoyin on the little infant. It's a very interesting thing, because they assume that already he must have, if Rabbi Nachman drew this soul down. So Maras Rebbetzin Feiga, she was a little girl. So his daughter was Nifteres just a month earlier. And when he came home from the journey, they didn't tell him. They couldn't bear to tell him. And they didn't tell him at all. And she wasn't being raised in his home. I don't know what the arrangement was, but she was being raised in the next village, in Ladizin. They had a nurse that was raising her. So he didn't see her on a daily basis, and so he didn't know. And then on Tavkuf Samachay, which is the Rosh Hashanah that he revealed Tisha Tikunin, as Amra Torah Tisha Tikunin Yakirin, he revealed this teaching. Rosh Hashanah Chol Az, as we already learned that year, Rosh Hashanah fell out B'yam Chamishi V'Shishi, Thursday night, Friday. Shabbos Tshuva Shala Achrav, on the following Shabbos, in Aser Semi Tshuva, Hayinu Mesupakim Im Niska Sheyichnas Elena Mechadra Leishiv Yomana Besuda Shlishis Lagalas Lanu Torah. We weren't sure. Maybe he's going to reveal Torah. We were sitting Shalosh Shos waiting, because the Rebbe was a recluse. He was a hidden person. He was totally hidden. And they didn't know what his deal was. They didn't know if he's coming out. There was no orderly thing. He was just. And we were all waiting outside his room. Maybe the Rebbe was going to come down and teach us. All of a sudden, the door to his office slams open. And people freaked out. People had huge pachad, and they were shaking and trembling, and it wasn't simple. Rabbi Nachman demanded that they send in his older daughter Miriam. He had a daughter Sarah, rather. I said Miriam or Sarah, maybe both, but Sarah for sure it was his older daughter that he had a very close relationship with. She was always around. And she came right away to his room. And he began to talk to her about the death of Feiga. He wasn't supposed to know, but he knew, but nobody told him. And she again says, "So what are you talking about?" No, she's fine, because they didn't decide yet to tell him. I don't know why. It's almost like a person who's 99 years old. We're like, it's not gonna die because it can bring them, it can kill them. He was a young man, but and then he said to her, "Halak farani yodeh emes." What do you? I already know the truth. How did he know? He knew. So he said, "What are you pretending? I know." And he forced her to say the words. And then he didn't come out of his room. Why is this relevant? I'll just read you one more paragraph. When Rabbi Nachman gave over the Torah Tisha Tikunim out of his notebook, because it's Lashon Rabbeinu, we were all standing there. He took a knife and he cut the Torah of Torah Chof out of his notebook to give it over to us, that we should copy it over, because there was some that he gave over Baal Peh, and there was some that Lashon Rabbeinu, it's literally his own words. Now the beginning of this Torah by the Rebbe was written over in the middle of a page. Then on the top of that page was another Torah that he didn't want us to see. He had big secrets to what he didn't want us to see that. So he didn't give over the first page because he didn't want everyone else to see. So the first bit he spoke out. And I was writing it. And his face then, all of a sudden, in the middle was just started shining. And then he stopped. And we were waiting for him to continue. And he stopped and he said, tonight is the yahrzeit of my mother. That his mother is called Feiga. The daughter that had just been Nifteres was called Feiga after his mother, who by all the tzaddikim was called Feigla HaNeviah. She was a prophetess. They considered her one of the Nevi'im. the Dagamach and Ephraim and Reb Baruch and Mezrich were her brothers, and they considered her to be a Navi. This is Rabbi Nachman's mother, Feiga the she was a prophetess. Gehaza Yud Tes Adar, it was her yahrzeit. Because this was the following year, right? This was after he had given over the Torah, he had it recorded. So I'm sorry, so it wasn't after. No, when he was giving over the Torah was the yahrzeit of his mother, that his daughter Feiga would be named after her, was what had just been iftar. So late. Okay, we'll just do a little bit more. And he completely forgot it was her yahrzeit. As he was giving over the Torah, his mother appeared to him somehow. And reminded him of the yahrzeit. So he smiled and he stopped. Take up Kara minyan. They immediately had a minyan together. He said Mishnayos, he said Kaddish, he lit a candle. And the next day, he davened in the main room, which he didn't usually do. He said all the Kaddishin, and he davened for the Amud, even shacharis, and he said everything. Okay, and let's just end like this. Then nearly Lefit Fisasenu Az. Says Rav Nassan, it appeared to us, Ki Aktana Hanal, the daughter who had been iftaris right before this teaching, Hayashma Feiga al Shem Imai. She was called Feiga for the mother, who's Shma Feiga. And the whole teaching speaks about the soul, that all the commentaries of the Torah come down through this soul, Isurin, etc. Says Reb Nassan, it appears to me because his mother was this tzaddikas, and therefore, says Reb Nassan, without getting into the whole thing now, Rabbi Nachman believed that his mother was the Miriam of their generation. It was his mother Feiga that had transmigrated, right? Had been nisgalgal into the daughter Feiga. And that his daughter Feiga was now, and what's remarkable is that it's a woman. It's that all of the big Talmidei Chachamim are drawing down Be'iriyat Torah that are flowing down to the world through a little girl. It's just an incredible construct. And Memela, that's the connection between his daughter Feiga being nifter and his saying over of the Torah Chof, which is all about this neshama that dies, right? And then things aren't clear, as well as on the day of him giving over the Torah, is the yahrzeit of his mother Feiga, that she's the one who is also the neshama that was drawing all the Torah down. Secrets upon secrets, mysteries upon mysteries of good Aschala to Torah Chof, which is a remarkable and unique lesson among all
האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני